I'm not a special pleader for this president, but I do want to recognize when he's doing the right things and making progress. And I think the news today about the supposed meeting coming up between him and Kim Jong-un and North Korea, I think that's a sign that he has done the right things. He's had the right strategy. He's been able to show strength at the same time, show a desire to reach a peaceable solution, but peace through strength. And I think this is the right strategy. This is something that has just not been done probably since Reagan. I mean, you saw Reagan pronouncing the evil empire of Russia and these kinds of things, and calling on Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall and these kinds of things. So that kind of rhetoric led to what happened in 1989, where you saw the collapse of the Soviet Empire, and there were lots of other factors. It wasn't just Reagan or Pope John, but I think there were certainly a lot of other issues there, and I think that Reagan certainly played into that and used the right strategy at the right time to bring about that conclusion. So I think those are good things. Looking at other news that we've had in the last day, I just looked at my Twitter timeline, and I'll turn that over here, and we'll just show some of the things that I think are really good signs. Here we have, here we show Sessions looks like he's investigating some of these leaks. Certainly, I think that the leaks out of the administration have been issues all along, even before the Trump administration, and it shows he's investigating 27 leaks of classified information. So, indication that they're trying to do the right thing. I think Sessions has shown a certain savvy here. I was skeptical. I continue to be skeptical, but I think the idea that we should keep our government accountable is certainly valid, and I think we should continually make our voices heard. At the same time, we should give credit when credit's due, and certainly we do. We don't have strictly an agenda to tear down this administration at all. We want it to be successful, and when it's doing the right things and showing progress, we want to recognize that, and I think this is one of those indications. Going up a little bit on the timeline here, we saw the Texas primaries, and we saw Chip Roy winning there. That was a big victory for him. Kim.com basically standing up for Julian Assange and saying that the CIA colluded with Sweden and the UK to extradite him to the US on bogus charges. Now the CIA and their non-official journalist agents tell you he's working for Russia. How stupid does the CIA think you are? So I don't really have a strong opinion on Julian Assange. I do feel he's doing the right things in general. So I don't really see a problem with him. I think he's been a positive force, all things considered. That could change over time, but I think right now he should be lauded for helping get some of the truth out on things that we need to know, that the public should know. Here's one. The New York Police Department are ready to arrest Harvey Weinstein on felony sexual assault. Whether that happens or not, who knows, but I think that's an indication that something is going to be done. Again, we're looking at action on the ground, what is happening, and those are the things we really want to see. Talk is cheap. We want to see actual things being done. Here we have the Department of Justice releasing more documents on Operation Fast and Furious. That's a good sign. I've been one of the biggest critics of Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch and the whole Obama administration, for that matter, but in particular the Department of Justice. So, the Department of Injustice. So I think those people need to be brought to justice. They need to be called to account. There's just no question about it in my mind. There was criminal action being done at the highest levels of what we want to think of as the Department of Justice, and here we have crimes being committed in the name of the Department of Justice. That needs to be dealt with. Here we have we have action now by Sessions to act in response to certain agencies in California who have been undermining the ICE agents trying to get to some of these illegal aliens who've committed crimes. In particular, And here it is, they're trying to undermine them. They're warning them off. They're telling them, giving them advance notice, this kind of thing. That's criminal action. That's something that people should go to trial for. So I think that's a good thing, all in all. There'll be a lot of complaints about it by certain factions, but I think overall the public wants to see this dealt with. I think the people in the country look at California as a quasi-criminal state, and it needs to be brought around, and so that's a good thing. Here we have a person just voicing an opinion that I think is pretty straightforward. He says, change the name of Democrat Party to Communist Party, let's cut the crap in the facade. I think that to a degree, I think the Democrats have been taken over by the most radical elements of their group in the political world, and I think that's probably about a safe statement there. I think that they don't want to use these loaded terms like communist, but that's what it is. So they want to take over. They want a revolution. They want to fundamentally change the country, and that's what it is. So I think that's fairly straightforward comment there. Here's a person talking about South Carolina, who was the first state to secede from the Union in the Civil War, and you had Jerry Brown, claiming that this was an act of war, which is ridiculous. California government on Department of Justice lawsuit, this is an act of war. That's an outrageous comment, and this person is just reminding them what happened to the South and in South Carolina when that happened. Here we have a person, James Woods, saying that this is, strong action and definitive action by Sessions, and I think the overall trend we're seeing, we've been expecting action by this administration, and I think there was a lot of talk about this, especially after Trump's comment about the calm before the storm, and then you had the QAnon phenomena, and we did expect something to happen in this first part of this year, particularly the Inspector General for the Department of Justice, and we haven't seen a lot yet. But again, we're starting to see movement, and we're starting to see that Sessions has been playing a strategic game. He's been doing the things that he should be doing in his role. So I'm cautiously optimistic that he is moving in the right direction and is definitely we're going to see action there. We'll see. I mean, time will tell. We haven't seen action exactly on the ground, but it does seem like it's getting closer, and it's really going to happen. There's lots of other areas that we want to see addressed, but that's certainly one of them. There's an article in the Gateway Pundit on John Kerry under official investigation for his role in the Steele dossier. So the State Department has been accused of providing support or action to get this dossier completed or acquired, and that shows a certain amount of collusion between the State Department and Fusion GPS and possibly MI6. Who knows? I mean, I don't know the whole story here. I don't know that anybody is absolutely certain at this point, but I think that's going to be something that will become more and more important, and I've never had anything good to say about John Kerry, and I think this would be certainly progress if we could call him to account for any number of things that he has been involved in. Here we have James Woods again commenting on Dianne Feinstein, saying you're a United States Senator who takes a sacred oath to uphold the Constitution, yet you support federal lawbreakers literally by the millions. Have you no shame? And here we have Attorney General Sessions, the comment by Dianne Feinstein saying that his efforts are irrational and unfair. Actually, it's Sessions, Attorney General Sessions called California's efforts irrational and unfair, exactly the words I'd use to describe the targeting of immigrants. Of course, they're not immigrants, they're illegal people who have no right to be here under the law, who are working, paying taxes, and following the law. Well, they're not following the law, they're inherently violating the law. So again, they're trying to do the right things by at least getting the worst part of these people out. I mean, we have a certain group of these people from south of the border who are have no desire to either assimilate, or who have an understanding or a really an appreciation for the kind of country that we are, the way we were founded, our Constitution, our freedoms, our traditions, and even as legal immigrants, we would not want these kind of people here, because they're not here to make the country better. They're not here to make a contribution. They're here to take what they can get out of the country and undermine in some ways the basis for what we're intended to be. So it's a problem. Here's Sessions in an interview with a person in Fox News, Bream. I'll just sort of put this on the screen and let you listen a little bit to this one.
Your message basically this morning was, we're not asking state and local authorities here to help us actively enforce ICE immigration enforcements or laws, but we're saying don't actively obstruct what we're trying to do.
That's exactly right. People have tried to spin this as somehow that we're demanding that the state and local officials go out and do the work of the federal government. We'd like their help. Most states and jurisdictions around the help help happily, but we just cannot allow them to obstruct or block the ability of federal officers to do the job they are lawfully required to do.
So again, a very reasonable statement by Sessions, claiming that we're not requiring the state law enforcement to help us, even though we would expect, just as common courtesy and respect for the rule of law in general, that we would see some state and local officials working in concert with federal law enforcement. But here he's saying, they're not doing that. They're undermining that. They're trying to subvert enforcement of the law. So that's a crime. Here we have federal judge allows Trump to withhold grants to California. Again, another victory in the court. So this is a good sign that not all of the judiciary is out to undermine the president or this administration, and certainly the executive branch has authority under the Constitution to do certain things, and this one is recognizing that. So that's a good sign. Here's an article, Twitter account called The Last Refuge. This is a guy who says, this must be read in light of tonight's developments. Keep in mind that Sundance believes the Department of Justice prosecutor has been quietly working in parallel with OIG, Office of Inspector General, since mid-2017, and that FISA abuses may have already been investigated by Horowitz. So there are certain individuals that believe that this Department of Justice under Sessions has been doing the right things, basically quietly and judiciously and in an orderly and steady way. I hope that's the case, and there does seem to be indications that that is going on. I think we'll find out a little more in the next few weeks, possibly. This Inspector General report is supposed to come out. How much they'll be able to release, I don't know, but they certainly will try to release everything they can without undermining the due process and so on. So that's a good thing, and I think there's certainly some of us who believe that that is indeed what has been happening. Today was March 8th. This was when the letter from Congress requested the Attorney General Sessions to provide certain information on the FISA surveillance violations and so on. I have not heard anything specifically today about this, but we'll see. So it's just, I just was making a note of that. And then I think we're about at the top here. Here we have a poison nerve gas attack on a former Russian spy in the UK, and I think he had some connection with these groups or these individuals that were feeding information to Christopher Steele and eventually to Fusion GPS for the dossier. So there could be some, and probably is some nastiness going on there as far as that, but then other people were affected, so there's a bunch of people that are being treated for this poison gas, this nerve gas. And then that's just my pinned tweet on people being banned and the censorship. The other thing that I think is I wanted to point out today was just a brief quote or a brief clip from Lionel, who is talking about, and he goes on quite a bit and rambles sometimes, but in the midst of everything he says, he has some really interesting kinds of observations. He's a bright guy, and he's actually I think pretty objective, and he's looking at what's going on in society and culture, which is something that interests me. And I'll just play this clip, and I think it's sort of indicative of what I've seen in terms of how our kids are being affected by the culture and the values and what's being spread out from there. So I'll just play this.
It's brutal. We want to kill reproduction. We also want to kill the human spirit. We want to kill the human spirit. We want to remove collegiality. We want to remove community. We want to remove and destroy the idea of humans coalescing, be a part of groups, identification. We want to kill that. We want them to feel singular in this solipsistic unity where they live by themselves, alone, without anybody else. I want a younger group of people who don't date, don't go to bars, don't hang out, don't go to concerts, don't meet, don't go to movies, I want them to be loners. I don't want them to drive. How many folks watching right now do you know who know young people who don't drive, have no interest in it whatsoever? Maybe there's Uber, maybe there's whatever it is. No interest in it. No sense of, I gotta get out. I've gotta get away. When I was 16, my God, it was on my birthday, on my birthday, 16 years old, 1974. Boom!
So, this is kind of a good place to stop here. I think the concern I have about what's going on in our culture and how it's affecting our kids is significant. I think and it's not really the kids' fault. It's really a culture, it's a belief, it's sort of a milieu of belief that has tended to frighten people away from having friends, having community, having trusting in anybody. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all. I'm sure there's still people going to bars and there's still people driving cars, but it's really it has tended to crush the idea that of independence, the idea of adventure, and the idea that we live even in a safe environment where these things can happen. So I think this is something that is concerning to me. I think it's happening probably in the big cities. I mean, I live in a small town, rural area at this point, although I spent most of my life in big cities. I lived in New York and Los Angeles area and in the Bay Area, so I've seen certainly the big differences between those environments. But I think generally there is a real isolation going on between people, and a lack of trust and a lack of community and a lack of friendships and this kind of thing. It's very difficult for this kind of thing to develop at this point. So this is a major issue, I think, that is not good for the future. And a lot of us are kids, and even myself. I mean, I spend most of my time, I wouldn't like it to be differently, but I just don't find I have the kind of relationships with people that I would like to have. I spend more time on Twitter and YouTube and these kinds of things, and I feel like I can at least hear people, and then I have an opportunity to express my views in some respect for whatever it's worth. I mean, I have my YouTube channel and I have Twitter and so on, but it's still not the same as having a dynamic social life, and at least having some good friends and some close friends and some people that really understand me and I understand them and so on. I mean, I have some friends that I had developed over the years, but those are very few and far between, and it should not be quite that way. So this is a concern, and I think Lionel kind of put his finger on that. So I'll wrap it up for there. I think generally we're seeing good things happening. I think the good news on North Korea is hopefully will lead to minimizing that, and it'll be sort of it'll set the pattern for getting off of a war footing and getting more onto a sort of domestic focus for our country, rather than having these kind of global empire building kinds of strategies, which I just don't think are good. I don't think they're healthy. I think they foster corruption and evil kinds of things. So hopefully this is where we're going to see the future go. There'll be certainly people that will oppose this, but I think this is right. This is the right direction.